Yay. Good morning, everybody. We're now recording, and so I should probably talk and not just leave a bunch of dead space there. Welcome again to School of Life. I just have so many things I feel like I want to say before I start, but I'm not sure they're really necessary. But it probably helps me, so I'm just going to say them. Ted's not here this morning, so what he's going to do is listen to the recording and then put his marvelous notes up on the Facebook page, because some of you really like that, and I do too. I mean, I'm like, oh, I said that? Did I say that?
How brilliant.
Yeah, that was really good. That was brilliant of me. Are there any announcements anybody needs to make, just community-wise?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay.
In the moment, on the refuge side of things.
Okay. Well, then we'll get started. I don't know, it's interesting, my relationship with this thing that we're doing. It's very self-serving. I started it, as you have heard the story many times. Like, I was just full of all these things that I wish I had known sooner, and so it gives me an opportunity to kind of just pour out all the stuff I've been carrying around. But the other thing is that this whole deal about being a human being and how complicated that is, I just don't want to do that by myself. So I think I started this because I wanted to talk about these things, and I didn't want to be alone. Hi, Dawn. I didn't see you come in. So just so you know that, every time I come here, I'm like, I love you guys so much. But of course, I have to be too cool to just blubber that out every time. But I do think about that every month. I just love being here. I love all your faces, and I'm glad I'm not alone on this journey. So just know that I think about that all the time. And the other thing is that usually I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And Kathy is gracious enough to make my little JPEG every time, because I think you like doing that a little bit. But I think she also knows that if it was left up to me, it wouldn't go out, and then I'd be here.
I do it for you.
Yeah, she does it for
Do it for all of you.
And I'd be here on a Saturday morning going, where is everybody? Oh yeah, I forgot to invite them. So thanks for that. But she's always asking me 2 weeks ahead of time, so what's your topic? Oh, I don't know what the topic is. Yeah, well, I don't know what the topic is. And so half the time I just make something up, and it's a little bit smart ass sometimes, and a little bit like I just have to declare it, and then I have to figure out what I'm going to say about it. But this time was a little bit different, because I had this really minor experience where I was walking around for several days, and I think I said to myself, I just feel really out of whack. I feel really out of whack. And then there was just a really quick little concept that came into my mind, and I'll share it with you hopefully later if you remind me. And I went, oh yeah. And just the concept of it sort of just shifted my whole thing. And I wouldn't say that I came back to wonderfulness, but it was really interesting. So then I started thinking about that phrase, out of whack. And so then it came, if you're out of whack, here's how to get your whack back, which I thought was really clever. but then I started thinking about all these other things, like, well, what is whack anyway? And that took me down a little bunny trail, which we'll go down together. And then the next realization I had was, haven't we been doing this for like 5 years, basically? Like, we're just trying to get our whack back all the time. And we're always here because we're off balance, or we're out of whack, or we feel out of sorts, or we're driving ourselves crazy. And all we're trying to do is figure out how to kind of restore a sense of equilibrium to our lives. So you may not know this because we gallivant into so many different aspects of being a human being. But in my mind, I know I'm just trying to get it simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. And by the time, I'm thinking if we're still doing School of Life in 5 years from now, we'll spend 30 minutes in silent meditation, and then we'll probably do some movement, and then some art, and then after we eat and talk, and then that will be it. Like I don't do any more teaching because the art of being a human being is kind of what we're talking about, but I'm just magicianing the shit out of it every single month, as if learning about it really will create something. That's my little secret, and so keep it to yourself. I really am trying to work myself out of a job. But as we go, it's like, in my mind, everything seems to be getting simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. Even as I have 25,000 ways of talking about the same damn thing. So I just felt like I had to get that out of the way. So today, I think what we're going to do, what I want to do, well, actually, when I thought, here's how I'm going to do it, we're going to just do a little thing about how to get your whack back. And then I started thinking about all that template we've been using for the last several months about the 4 quadrants. And I thought, well, I'll just go into each of the quadrants. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about that. We'll just figure out how to do these little. And then I realized we could probably be talking about this for the next several months. So I'm backing up and saying I'm going to try not to do the fire hose thing. And then, so this month we're going to talk a little bit about what we're aiming for, like what's the goal, and so we can kind of all be on the same page. What is whack? And then how to use the 4 quadrants template to notice how, in what particular way are we out of whack, and then to see what each of the quadrants has to offer us to get back into whack, whatever that is. And so it got really complicated and mushroomed in my mind. So we'll probably only get to one of the quadrants today. And I want you to think about which one you would like to start with, because that's your job now. So while I'm talking about that, think about which one of those we should start with. And we'll make sure we go through all of them, but we'll probably dwell on one today. So, ready? Any questions? Any thoughts? Here's the first question. Oh, this is cool. Neon pink. What is whack? Like what is it that we're hoping to be restored to? I'd like to have a little bit of a conversation about that because I think it helps our awareness of what are our expectations about how we're supposed to be and what's really realistic and what's really possible.
Are you having underwear?
No, I don't have pockets.
Oh, it's gonna come out your leg.
What's this weird feeling? You people who are not here, never mind. You need to come here for some of the good stuff. So I'm not even going to tell you what happened. There are a couple of people who actually listen to the recordings I found out this week. Okay, so help me out here. Help me out here. When you're thinking about what is it you're trying to get back to, what I want to distill us down to is what are our expectations, what's reasonable, what are we trying to get back to, and what does that feel like? So, go. Peace.
Those are bad, Phyllis. You
Okay.
need something darker.
Is the red
I
bad?
think it might be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, peace, a sense, a feeling of peace, right? You're saying? Okay. You guys are good.
I looked it up. Do you want to know?
Well, well, actual whack? Yes. That- somehow that never occurred to me. Let's get the definition of whack, shall we?
Well, I've heard people say that is so whack.
Well, I know it's used in lots of different ways.
Okay. Main definitions: to strike with a sharp blow,
Whack.
a sharp blow, the sound of a sharp blow, and to kill someone deliberately.
Okay. Did that make you a little nervous then when we were going to talk about how to do? Well, then what does out of whack mean? What does out of whack mean?
That doesn't sound all bad if you're out of whack, then
Well, and I
it's
think-
not killing somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole. Yeah. So,
Indicate from killing someone.
yeah, for our purposes, yeah, we want to make sure that we are, I like to call it some sort of equilibrium or some sort of
I would use a balance.
humming, like we're humming along at a good clip or something. Bounce.
That was the word I was thinking about. Flow.
Ooh. Flow is a lot to ask for, but I love it.
A lack.
What?
Wait, a lack of
Oh.
doing.
I thought, is that a Dutch word? Halak.
Out of whack.
Oh, yeah.
Would mean to me a sense of impending doom or that you can't get over.
Okay. Aflac of a sense.
Is whelmed a word?
Whelmed, yeah. Not overwhelmed, just, or underwhelmed, just whelmed. That's a good one.
I'm thinking like a reasonable amount of clarity or energy.
Oh,
You know, like I always think when I'm out of whack, I'm feeling like foggy and
Okay.
blah.
okay. These are good. I'm sorry that I underestimated you. I thought you were going to say things like happy and joyful and, things like that. But,
Well, and I don't know if
so
this
you got a
is
good,
either, but you know how you're discombobulated? Is there the word
Combobulated?
combobulated? 'Cause I feel like
I'm not even going to spell that one. Come, Bob.
Is that a word? I feel like that should be that everything's combobulated. That should be a word. It should be a word. If it's not, it is now.
All right, I'm going to write it down then for Marty. Come, Bob,
B-O-B.
you lay, oops.
Now's your opportunity to spell it however you want.
Yeah. We're redefining whack, so combobulated
Whelmed
is a word.
I think.
And whelmed is a word, then combobulated is a word.
When I think
I'm
of
all for it.
having whack, I picture someone walking down the road energetically, just like
Yeah.
happy, free, carefree.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay, so we're pretty much on the same page. We're not asking for bliss necessarily or extreme happiness. And I'm hoping that you're not asking for external circumstances to be right? We're talking about kind of an inner way of being with ourselves and the world and other people. Yeah, Mary.
Just one more thing I wanted to add is that when you talked about being able to walk down the street or handle whatever, I just think of resources. Like
Oh yeah, we're
a
resource. Yep.
sense of abundance instead of scarcity.
Mhm,
So that when stuff flies at you, yes, you get overwhelmed or underwhelmed, but you get your whelm back because there are resources
Yeah,
available.
that's really good. That's really good. Wellness, yeah. Yeah. Just basic wellness.
When I was thinking to tie in Amy's definition, what if it really is like we're killing it at life? Like you're whacking life and going, I'm doing this.
Killing it.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to trigger you.
You're winning at life.
Winning, or things are, yeah. You're feeling like you have agency and competency. Let's put it that way.
That's such a good word.
Agency, I like
Yeah, yeah. So very good. This is really good. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page, because I think that some of us feel like if we're not giddy with happiness all the time, that we're doing something wrong. And some of us feel like being at peace with ourselves and sort of in our own body is like the carrot out at the end of the stick, like something scary about actually having that. And maybe none of you feel that way, but that for me, for decades, that's kind of what it was. There was some way in which I was kind of addicted to the struggle all the time, and had this, pole coming out of my forehead with a carrot at the end of the stick, always like dedicating my life to getting there, but absolutely making sure I never did. And something about the struggle with these things, like this unattainable okayness, I guess, it finally started to dawn on me a few years ago, that I'm always after this thing, but I'm never getting there. And I'm kind of almost manufacturing stuff to work through to get there, so I don't have to deal with being there already. So the challenge was, what if I'm already okay? What if I'm already like at some level just where I'm supposed to be, and that I could stop the striving and the manufacture of psychological principles and models and whatever to obtain this thing that, first of all, I have not yet defined, and secondly, scares the shit out of me to actually have. Because if I have that, then what? There's a whole lot of brain space that will just be empty because I have literally dedicated my life and my career to this thing. But anyway, it was a weird sort of a paradox that I caught myself in, and not just me. Some of my therapist friends too. We always get something out of the struggle, and out of there's so much drama and intensity in digging, excavating, and that kind of thing. So anyway, all of this, combobulated flow, peace, purpose, balance, abundance, killing it in life, sense of wellness, lack of this impending doom, whelmed, some sense of clarity. This is our birthright, right? This is our birthright as human beings. And that was a big revelation to me, that we were designed to operate in whack. We were designed that way. And all the systems of the human soul and body are sort of designed to be able to operate like a well-oiled, living, loving machine, I guess. And so we get to have that, even in the midst of circumstances that are confusing or terrible or are actual, not just manufactured, but they're real. There is a place, there is the land of whack that is inside, that is possible for us. And it'll be on a continuum, of course. So if you're in the middle of a disaster, or if you've lost someone, or if things haven't gone well, or you've been rejected, or those kinds of things, those are bad. And if you're suffering because of those things, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. And you're probably going to be in a season where you're not going to feel like you're just puttering along, killing it in life. But there is available to you an appropriate to the circumstances. This is my belief, that to each of us there's available a little space there to feel sane and to feel a little bit whole, or to feel some hope, and some perspective. So that is whack. Anything else? Any other comments about where we're starting from? I think one book that I really like is by Rick Hansen, who's a neuropsychologist working in the field of positive psychology, which I don't know why I didn't pick that to begin with. Positive psychology. I think if I was going to get an advanced degree, it would be in that. And it makes me wonder how many really miserable people go into positive psychology. A lot, I would bet you. Anyway, he wrote a book, and he's a Buddhist psychologist, but he wrote the book, The Buddha's Brain. And so he talks about neuroplasticity and learning how to train your brain toward happiness. And he uses the word happiness, I think, in an appropriate way. But I don't know what point I was trying to make with this.
You're gonna recommend a book.
The Buddha's Brain or Buddha's Brain. Yeah, but I don't know why I wanted to tell you that. Positive psychology. Oh, sorry. I remember the exact spot on my walk that I grappled with the concept I'm about to tell you, but I couldn't remember the concept. It was this idea that a lot of people don't feel like they deserve to be happy. And so happiness in this sort of contented whack place can be a really dangerous place if we're not careful. And we don't even know that it's dangerous. But when you begin to attain that thing, a little whack or whatever, your dreams or something that you really, really want, getting close to it can create for us an opportunity for vulnerability that we have not learned to tolerate. And so I just want to say that out loud because it makes human beings kind of crazy people. Yeah. And so we're like striving after this thing, and then as soon as we get close to it, we start to feel down here something that we can't quite articulate, but it's that fear of vulnerability, because once you have it in your hand, then you can lose it. Yeah. And so we start to try to, I listened to a little snippet of Brene Brown just randomly yesterday, and she was talking about running dress rehearsal for disaster or something. Well, she didn't use disaster because for what? No. My word is running disaster drills. We're always like anticipating loss, or she's trying to beat vulnerability to the punch, I think was her phrase that she used. And so anyway, I just want to highlight those things for us because it really is kind of a paradox that keeps us always striving because we know how to do that. But resting, we don't always know how to do that. And not having anything to struggle with or to work our brain on or to kind of be like aspire to makes us feel like, well, it gives us nothing quite to do. And so then we're not used to the joy of being and just being in the moment. And that scares us a little bit. Plus, if we feel happy. Anyway, so the whole idea of...
One of the words she uses is the consequence of that is squandering joy.
Yeah, squandering joy.
The word squandering is just so
powerful.
Dense.
Yeah. But how crazy is it and how scary must it be if we have it within our grasp and then we sabotage it or we push it away or we can't bet on it, because the fear of the loss of it is more painful to us than the not having it. And we're used to not having it and being okay. We're just not used to being okay and being okay. Okay, so that's a little bit what always blows my mind about being a human being. It's just too weird sometimes. So this is what we're talking about. So keep that in mind as we're going, that we know what it feels like to be out of whack in a general way. So, anything else? Any other comments?
The only thing I would add, everyone's in different places, but to not underestimate the theological thing that got in a lot of us from conservative Christianity. And so that, it's just in there that you're never supposed to feel good.
Yeah.
And if you feel good that's selfish or it's worldly or it's something, it's just in there. Even though I've been out for a long time, I've deconstructed all of that, but it's the weirdest thing how somehow I'm supposed to not feel good.
Gotta carry the cross.
Yeah, something.
Because I was gonna say it earlier, but then I felt stupid. So,
So I felt stupid for you. I didn't feel stupid actually.
I was just gonna say that it feels, thank you Christianity, or conservative, for, you don't want the arrogance of saying, well, I've arrived.
Yeah.
You know, like if you actually have it or you actually know something, then it feels arrogant, like you can't say that you have it,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
everyone else doesn't, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, so that's part of the allergy we have when we approach this. A lot of us grew up in systems where, of course, you can't really, you always have to be on your guard and you better not relax because that's when you really get in trouble or when something really bad happens. But most of us come through a faith system where somehow it seeped into us. I know for me, it was taught from the get-go. So the idea of self or self-consciousness, like self is what you give up. Self is what you trade for the goodies of heaven and the right to have a relationship with God. And no one ever could like parse that out for me. So, and I was sort of wired to give that up anyway. Was pretty scared of having to hold the responsibility of being my own person. And it was pretty scary. So I signed up right away. Here, you want more? Here, I'll give you more. I got it. Here, you can have it. You can have it. Not me. Less of me, more of you. All of those things that are in the right context make perfect sense. But there's a whole like half of the population for whom those words we take too much to heart, and then we misunderstand what was really meant for it, and then we're actually getting in our own way, and then the system that was supposed to support us and help us to actualize who we were made to be gets in our way, and we like reject it in the name of following. So that's how religion of any kind really. It's a byproduct. It's not unintended in some ways, consequences of really wanting to get it right, Barb?
So I was in therapy one time and I was telling my therapist about a victory that I had at one point. There was a bad situation that kept happening and kept happening and I never knew what to do about it. I never knew how to handle it when it came up. And then one day I did, I handled it well. And it never happened again. And I was telling her about it, and I said, that was just the Holy Spirit coming in. There's no way I could have known that by myself, but the Holy Spirit just came in and showed me what to do. And she said, maybe. Or maybe you just figured it out after it happened 100 times.
Yeah.
And you figured it out. And that freaked me out at first. It took me
Yeah.
a long time to let that sink in. I really rejected that. But I think if you have that idea that you have to wait for some spirit to come through you, then you're never gonna allow yourself to learn. You're never gonna like let those lessons that you've learned actually sink in and work from them.
Hannah?
So I just keep thinking, like, as we're talking, and then I was like, is this relevant? But it just keeps bombing back around. There's this, Pema Chodron was talking about how, like, what is the resistance to, like, just meditating, right? Like, because everybody wants to get to this place of, like, still waters. What's the problem? And she says, I think, well, I don't know if she's saying this, but I think innately we feel like, yeah, like, I want the still waters. I want everything to be, like, just no ripples. But she was saying, but what happens when you get to that still waters, like, then you look into the water and it's like all the dead, like all the stuff that, if you just keep having choppy waters and you don't have to just like be with yourself. And I wonder if that's also part of it. It's like, now I'm here, I have this thing, this is great, and now I'm like, I have to like, it's like, now what? And you're just, somehow victory, you have to be with yourself in this like really freaky and then also emotionally heightened way. So I wonder if it's kind of like that thing of when you finally, okay, like I settle down and it's quiet, and then all the creepy shit just starts like, you just start seeing it and you have to kind of reconcile, like, that is me and this is okay, and all the dead things that are floating in there, that's okay, it's all right. Like, and I think that's like probably probably one of the most distressing things. Like it's what keeps me from like just being in whack, you know. I think.
Yeah, because we don't know how to accept the full spectrum of who we are with any kind of peacefulness. And we have been carefully instructed not to. So if we are a sum of all of these things that are both brilliant and idiotic, and graciously loving and kind and murderous, and this and that, like it's all there. We want these, and we want to eradicate these, which is kind of a no-brainer, right? Like how, it's not like we're dumb or something. You know, no one likes the negative, but, and that's what keeps the striving going, because there's always something. You know, if you get to a place where you look in the mirror and then something comes up and you're like, oh, better work on that, better work on this, better work on that. You know, it keeps us going. And because there's always something, and we have this sort of binary mindset, then we're always on this track. But we're on this track then that is never going to get us where we're really going. So there's a certain kind of unconditional acceptance of all of the bits, and the sense that all of those things belong in a way. And that doesn't mean that, you know, I don't have to tell you that. I was going to do a little disclaimer. It doesn't mean, you know, is murder okay then? Is that something that we accept? I had to go to the, sorry. Yeah, just whack them. But instead we're trying to whack this stuff to get our whack back. Anyway. Yeah, just whack the bad stuff, you know. Anyway, so back to the point is, and maybe we should talk about this more because I think it's really important. Barb, you were talking about that internal resistance. So when you were there, just an aside to Hannah, sometimes I go like this and I stop and then go like this and then go, I don't know, and never get back there. So just a warning. Just a warning. I've decided to linger on this thing for now, and because I think it's important to recognize it when it happens. So if you could be so kind as to try to describe how it felt in your body when she said, or maybe not, and then you had to go, like, because I guess we could see the look on your face.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah. Well, I mean, just remembering it now, I feel like a tightness in my chest, and I'm warming up a little bit.
okay.
It's like I'm not allowed to think that. I'm not. That's like putting myself above God. You know, to think that I figured something out on my own and wasn't just used as a mouthpiece of the Spirit.
Okay. And so if you were, then what? Like, let's just kind of, if you don't mind, logically kind of trail that down. So, oh my gosh, I can't put myself above God. Or else what? I mean, it's not like I have the answer. I'm just waiting for you to say it.
Yeah. I don't know if I thought this at the time, but right now I'm thinking, or else maybe I don't need God as much as I thought I did.
And why would that be bad if you didn't need God as much as you thought you did?
Because then I'm on my own.
Oh, so then you'd be on your own. So,
Right.
so if
Maybe I got it
you,
right that time, but I probably won't get the next thing.
and so then, okay, let me just follow this logically. So, okay, so I can't think that, because then that was about me and not about God, which would mean I don't need God as much as I thought I needed God. And so then, if that's true, then I might not get God the next time I really need God. Is that kind of what you're implying? Like if you stand up and go, yeah, I guess I did that on my own. And is God going to go, well, then fine. Is that? I mean, we don't think these things through. That's why I want to kind of linger on this idea, because we feel it in our body, then we just go, shoop, and we don't What is it that we're afraid of, or what is it that's happening here that is standing in our way every time?
So that line of thinking is what I've been following that has completely unraveled my faith. The premise that God is external, or this external authority. And so stepping, coming back to a different perspective and thinking maybe there is an inner light, an inner breath, an inner authority, and I don't have to view that as separate from God, but it's hard to name because is it me? Is it something that's in me? Is it an empty space? Is it a filled space? And all of these things are in the realm of paradox and mystery, and I don't have any answer for it, but I am beginning the process of trusting the experience instead of that external source, and having this tension between external resonance and then that internal resource that appears in those moments that I totally can honor and appreciate because it's so cool. It's like, oh, I did a good grown-up thing.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What else? See if you can find that resistance. I think, and I can share with you mine, but I think it had to do with so in Kathy's model of spiritual development, in the unraveling piece, and then when people start like trying to think outside their particular box, I guess, and the box starts to unravel. One of mine happened in grad school, and I was taking all these classes, and I can't remember what it was that triggered it, but I felt like I was on this sort of precipice, like I can step into greater confidence in myself and ownership of myself, or go back. What do you call that when you go back? Returning. Oh, returning. Going back. We call that going back. And it struck me, I had this sort of moment of shock, and I attached it to a theology. And the theology was the knowledge of good and evil. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm like recapitulating the sin of Adam and Eve in the garden, where they decided for themselves what was good and what was evil. And that was the fall of mankind. That was and I really, really believed that was really the fall of mankind. And so God must somehow want us to abdicate an internal self-knowledge of good and evil. I just bought that from the beginning. And here I caught myself, like I felt like I was on the precipice of committing that big sin by buying what they were teaching me there. And I just went, oh, I dodged a bullet here. Because my job is to be more dependent on God and be less independent. Yeah, independence would be the bad thing, and not just a bad thing, but the bad thing that broke humanity. It broke creation. This whole thing. So that I had that kind of very consciously, but I think a lot of us carry that within us, and we don't recognize it until it just feels like something in your gut, and then you go, huh. And then you just don't think of the implications. So I think for a lot of us, there's huge resistance, not just theologically, but all kinds of ways to this thing about what does it mean if I step into all of who I am, and then I'm responsible for it. And then I have to then forgive myself, or then I have to accept myself. Like, these are very big developmental milestones that a lot of us, for me especially, I wanted to avoid all of that. And so my faith system helped me do that. So in a way, I misused it because it wasn't designed for that purpose. And I shielded myself from having to be myself and own it and say, hey, that this is it. And I get to forgive myself, and I get to embrace myself, and I get to be at peace with it. So is this confusing to everybody? Okay. All right, what do you think? Any other comments? Shall we move on? All right, so we're noticing that. So we're switching gears to the 4 quadrants here. And what I want to do is pick a quadrant and talk about out of whack and whack in each of the quadrants, because I think it's a little bit helpful to see it articulated in these ways. I hope it's helpful. Otherwise, we're just magicianing the shit out of it, but it's okay. So, previously at School of Life, we have this configuration. Sovereign, warrior, lover, magician are the archetypes that we use to help understand the functions that we have inside of us of being, doing, feeling, and thinking. Okay? And so our job as fully integrated and whole human beings, or the hope is that we can have these energies in balance and be able to use them to help us get our whack back in lots of different ways. But they're in service to wholeness. And so it helps to be acquainted with them in ways that will help us when we need them. So my intent today is to pick one of these quadrants, and we'll just kind of talk about what does it feel like, what's it like when you're out of whack in this particular quadrant, and what does it feel like when you're in whack in this particular quadrant, and what's useful in there to help you get it back. So here's where you get to decide which one of these do we want to start with. Hopefully you can have a consensus. You don't care? Magician. You want to start with magician? You're not tired of magician? Okay, that's mostly what I wanted to figure out was I feel like I'm always talking about the magician all the time. And so I'm wondering if you're bored with that or if you want to start in a different quadrant.
My first thought was sovereign. That's just me. I mean, I know you kind of need the other ones, but that's sort of the integrator. That's the way I think of it. So I'm just tossing that out there.
I sort of think it'll blow my scheme if we do sovereign, because then we don't have to talk about all the rest of them.
Okay, I was just brainstorming.
You said you were my warrior is out of whack right at the moment. That's the one that I feel is.
So we could work on Dawn.
Okay.
No, I don't care, because magician was my first thought.
Magician's easy, and we've been doing this for 5 years, deconstructing magician and figuring out how we get out of whack, because that's like my biggest way to get out of whack. And there's all kinds of little tricks to do that with. So, I don't know.
Hey, Phyllis?
Yeah.
For people that might have not been here for that, can you just say it real quick what the 4 are? I know you said the name, but I don't know how to do that quickly.
Sovereign is the function of being. And that's the part of us that kind of integrates and knows, kind of holds the whole inside ourselves, who we really are, what we're for, takes responsibility, makes important decisions, and is like the king or queen over our particular little kingdom. The warrior is the function of warrior is doing, and that part of us is the part that that implements or executes the whatever decisions get made. Plus, the warrior part of us defends, stands up for, presses through, sets boundaries, decides what's in, what's out, what's okay, what's not, in terms of our little sovereign entity here. Its job is to carry out the wishes and to serve as the warrior gets stuff done, basically. The lover is the feeling function and attachment. Oh no, that's not a T. Attachment, so it's about relationships and emotions. So the lover is the part that it corresponds to the heart, has all the capacity to feel and to connect and to be attached. And the magician is the thinker, or the thinking function, and that's to conceptualize and to be creative and to solve problems and to understand, basically. So those are the 4 functions. So I don't know who I would kind of like to save sovereign for later, if that's okay, Kath.
Of course.
And so who wants warrior? Who wants I thought maybe we'd start with lover.
Are we going to catch
I did.
You can take a vote now, because now you already said it.
I want to start with love. How Josh is always telling me, Mom, just decide because it's what you want.
I want to start with lover too.
Okay, thank you.
We all do because
Okay.
Because it's kind of neglected, and it's sort
Yeah,
of
it kind of is
happens,
neglected. Yeah.
And then all this other kind of nondescript, dysfunctional shit falls out.
Yeah. Okay. I apologize. I thought that I really was open to whatever, and then I thought, I really kind of wanted to.
I was starting to, yeah.
I kind of,
That's why you love us.
yeah, it is kind of why I love you. Loser. This is the loser quadrant. Raise your hand if you want to start in the loser quadrant. If the shoe fits. Okay. And if we need more time, here's my thing. I really want to take our time. After last time when I think we did one month in each quadrant, what I heard from you all was, can we do more? Can we do more? Can we do more? So I'm slowing it down. If you're bored, I will notice, and then we'll come up with something else to talk about. But okay, let's start in the lover quadrant. The question we want to ask is, what's it like when your lover is out of whack? And what's it like? Well, we kind of know. We could probably figure out what whack is, but let's talk about what is the distinctive condition? Like what words would you use to describe when would you imagine you would use to describe when your lover, specifically your lover's out of whack?
Codependency on steroids. And like just hooked in.
Hooked in, yeah.
Like
okay.
Overly hooked in to whoever you're in relationship with.
Hooked in a codependent way. Mm-hmm. So that and what does that feel like, Kathy?
Exhausting.
So you're exhausted, okay.
It feels
Dishonest.
Yeah. I think maybe a word that comes to mind for me, like right now, is exasperating, kind of. Like.
Okay.
conflict.
So you're in conflict. Okay.
Myself over
Like inner confliction, kind of.
Like an
conflict
angst, like an
Uh-huh.
inner angst.
Okay. Angst. Would angst
Yeah.
fit? Okay.
Like it's not right, but you can't make it stop.
Yeah.
I was thinking weak, feeling weak.
You feel weak. Okay, when you're, that's interesting.
Sometimes desperate.
Okay.
Exhausting.
Yep.
Angry.
Not present?
Not present. Okay. How about hurt? Hurt, I'm talking about like really basic emotions. To feel hurt in an emotional way that is a lover wound. And so we do a lot because we're either hurt or because we want to avoid being hurt. But it's like anytime you feel hurt, I think you're in lover. And anytime you feel really sad.
That's my word. Sad.
Grief is the kind of the quintessential lover wound, loss and grief. Because there's something really raw and inarticulate about it. It's in the body and it's in the heart. It's right in the heart. So there's nothing more like immediate to feel and to know you're in the lover quadrant than if you're grieving, you're sad, you're hurt, like relationally hurt. Those are the very really basic kinds of things. And so all these other things, like some of these are like drawn in from other quadrants too. Weak is probably more of a in the warrior quadrant. You know, I feel hurt. And abandoned is another one. Alone, abandoned. Alone is probably loneliness, aloneness, and isolation. All that I think is a really core lover.
Misunderstood.
Yeah, alienated. What word do I want to?
Well, I keep thinking of dishonesty, and maybe it's more like toward denial of those wounds that turn into that kind of exhaustion. Like,
Yeah, I think
no, that's all right.
I think that codependency is definitely mostly in the lover quadrant, but it's a conglomeration of behaviors and attitudes that are designed to keep us from feeling the angst of our attachment to someone and the inability to be separate and connected at the same time. And so then we get into all of these, we start to feel desperate, we start to, we're trying to help someone, or we're wanting them to be better, so then we get exasperated because of our connection, because of our fear of loss of them, and fear of our own being implicated in whatever disaster they're running hard toward. And so codependency, I think, is like a very complicated web of defense mechanisms so that we don't experience loss. And the desperation of codependency and the sickness of codependency should tell us something about how valuable it is to be connected to other people. That we want to be connected so deeply, or we're afraid to be disconnected so deeply, that we will impair our entire lives in order to avoid that. So when we're in the lover quadrant, we are talking about some really deep, deep emotions and needs for connectedness. And that's what I want to emphasize. Because when we're in the lover quadrant and we're out of whack there, the other thing that I think it feels when you're out of whack in the lover quadrant is you feel young. Like if you find yourself feeling small or feeling really young, then you're probably dealing with some kind of lover wound or some kind of lover dilemma. Because children, when they come out, they're born right into lover. They're all heart, other than what they do and what they accomplish. But their whole brain is being formed by their attachment, particularly to the primary caregiver, And it's forming the basis for the way they interpret reality, the way they are able to develop and move into the world. It governs their relationship with everything. And so the ability to think objectively isn't even hardly online yet. But that's attachment. They say that from the child's perspective, there is no such thing as the mother and child. It is a mother-child entity. And they start to feel their separateness, like become aware of their separateness from their primary caregiver or the mother, ideally, only at about maybe 18 months at the earliest, to 2 years. Do they start to experiment with this idea that, oh, we're not the same being, you know? I can run away and go play and then come run back. So this whole, in child development, if you ever studied the concept of rapprochement, which is how toddlers learn this, how to be separate from their mother. Like they'll, I've watched film on this where they just observe the child will run off and go play, and mom will be sitting there, and 30 seconds later they'll run back and they just need a little hug or a little contact, and then they run off again and they come back, they run off, come back. And that is a very necessary part of the process, because they are just, it's just dawning on their nervous system that they are a separate entity from mom, and that's kind of okay. Is it okay? I think it's kind of okay. I think I'll go, this looks really interesting. I'm going to, oh, wait, where's my attachment? And then they run back, and then they, and so I think it's a really, really brilliant and really troublesome way that human beings were designed to be so dependent on healthy attachment in order to be a whack human being, like a, you know, and that, so I just want to point that out, because there's a lot of wounding that can happen to young children, and all of those wounds go straight, the biggest one is straight to the heart. Like, yes, there's trauma. Yes, there are, you know, confusing things that happen to children, but the biggest impact of everything that happens to a child goes straight to the heart. And so if you're out of whack in the lover quadrant, one of the things you may be feeling, or maybe I should say it the other way around, if you feel small and like you're 5 when really you're 65, then you know you're in the lover quadrant and something really deep has been activated, and it's a lover wound. And the only reason we need to say that is so that we can figure out what's really useful. Except I'm getting ahead of myself now. So this is all, this is how it feels when you're out of whack in lover. Small, sad, alone. There's a lot of fear in the lover quadrant, but it's usually fear of loss. And hurt, rejection, like that sense of rejection, that deep, deep disappointment when you feel like you've been pushed away or not accepted in an attachment situation. Hidden, not seen, not known. Yes, thank you. That's really good. And so if you feel hidden, can you say more about that? Like,
yeah, I don't want to be seen. I don't trust that the people that I'm attached to, if they do see me, that would be okay.
Okay. So like a self-protection,
Yes, yeah.
because being seen has somehow been painful. Yeah. So that has two sides of the thing. Like, I think we want to be seen and we need to be seen. And part of what forms our brain is this gaze back and forth, this mirroring of the parental units, so that the child can see that the person they're gazing at sees them in a particular way, and that feels safe. So when you feel like you can't reveal that, or you're hidden, or you want to be hidden, that's indication of something whack, you know, in that sense of ease of being accepted by another person. Okay, thank you for that. I had something else that was related to that. I think that conversely, to want to be seen but to not be seen, is a lover wound. That means that you reached for reflection and acceptance and love, but it wasn't available to you. And as a child, you noticed when that happened. So a lot of these are very pre-verbal happenings that define the nervous system. And so some of us, and I put myself in that category, I think, that a lot of my lover wound has to do with the absence of enough being seen and being mirrored in a way that helped my nervous system feel like it could be secure and contained inside myself. So when we're talking about lover wounds, and lover out of whack, these are deeper inside the brain. And it's part of why it's hard to talk about, because these things we experience as realities or phenomena, but it's hard to put them into words. Linda?
Well, I just was struggling a little bit with part of what you're saying. I guess I understand it when you're talking about when we're feeling young and it's going back to that old wound. That makes sense to me, that's out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that some of these things that we wrote on here that we feel, like even feeling hurt, that's not necessarily always out of whack. That's just what's true, what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a situation, it's not necessarily out of whack, but when it goes back and touches that old wound, then I can understand it. But I was just struggling with, feeling hurt or sad, being that it's in itself out of whack.
Oh, I guess I'm just meaning out of whack is general, whether we make it up, whether it's legit or not legit. Is that what you're saying? Being hurt is a reality. It's just something that, well,
it's not bad to be hurt.
yeah, it's not bad to be hurt, and it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong.
It doesn't necessarily mean you're out of whack. You're just feeling
Or
sad.
that you shouldn't feel sad for any reason. Yeah.
But yet when it gets tied in with those old wounds, I totally get that part.
Okay. It's a maybe finer distinction than I thought I was making. but yeah, I just want to make that clear that when we feel just out of sorts, we don't feel good. So there could be many reasons for that. That's what I was meaning by whack. So
I really like that clarification, though, just for me, because I've been in this exact right in this last season, is that honoring that hurt is just real instead of something to manage or take care of, and that it just is. And it doesn't have something I can't magically make it be gone or solve it.
Try to bring it back into balance.
Yeah.
Just
So
feel it.
that was just helpful to me to.
Something I have to work on.
What'd you say?
It doesn't necessarily mean something I have to work on to get myself back in whack. It's just
right. Well, I'm just thinking in terms of equilibrium. And so when you're hurt, it's valid. And it goes right to the heart. So we are in the lover quadrant of being hurt. So there's nothing wrong with being hurt, and it doesn't necessarily need to be fixed. It just is. But there is a kind of a curve of resolve or being met in it. So when you're having an emotion, there's an escalation of an energy. So let's just pick hurt for a second. So something happens and it registers as hurt. It hurts us in an emotional way. So that if we trace the curve of the intensity of that emotionality, it would go kind of like this. And so ideally, at the peak, somewhere along the curve, backing up, a normal emotion is like a wave. So it goes up and then it resolves. And it goes up and it resolves. And the more we can know that, the more we can be okay with it and be present with ourselves when we're experiencing an emotion. The problem with a lot of us is that, and so what builds this resilience, this ability to just ride the wave, knowing you're going to be okay, is that usually when we're very young and we're overwhelmed by a strong emotion, we're met by something at the peak. And it usually has to do with kindness or love. Love, kindness, safety. Pretty simple. So because a child experiences the energy wave going like this, and it's just pure sensation, and there's usually fear or some kind of activation around it, then if they're not met, then it's sort of, you don't know what to do, because there's no reassurance, there's no like catching of it, there's no space being held for it that says, no, you're okay, it's going to be okay, or I'm sorry that hurt you. No validation, no comfort, no assistance in returning to equilibrium. So soothing of some sort is helpful to learn how to ride the waves, that I'm a human being that has emotions and they're not going to kill me. You know, it feels really intense, but I'm okay. I kind of return. I'm going to return. The problem with parenting is that a lot of times this escalation in a child activates a parent in some way. And usually because they didn't know what to do. So we get nervous or anxious when our child is hurt or anxious. And so that activates that, and what we want to do is fix it instead of catch it and catch them in it. So for a lot of us, there's a lot of, there's fixing, there's denying, there's shaming, there's invalidating, there's minimizing that gets done instead of very simple, I got you. You're going to be okay. This is going to pass through. How about if we just sit and breathe? How about if we, whatever. You just need a little bit of kindness, a little bit of good parenting. But unfortunately, for a lot of us, that was just in short supply. So how we get wounded in the lover quadrant a lot is that we don't have good enough experience with this wave riding thing. And so we start to experience a strong emotion, and then we kind of panic. That's because the nervous system didn't get to understand that you're going to be okay. You can feel these strong things. You're going to be okay. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't mean to belabor this thing, but I like to belabor things. But I think it's important, because these are physiological things that are happening all the time in our body and in our mind, and we don't know what to do with them, so we just skip over them, or we try to fix them, or we do all the things that were done to us. So this is why I think we get this, if you're hurt, it's okay to be hurt. It's not a problem. You're not a nuisance because you're hurt. And I don't have to treat myself like that. Yes, it's scary if I'm hurt and I don't know what to do, and it can kind of agitate us. And to learn how then to just be with an emotion and begin to experience it. When you're present with yourself in a non-judgmental, loving way, you can help yourself ride the wave and be that kindness for yourself as it resolves. And then you're like, man, I was just a mess yesterday, and today I'm okay. Like the sun came out and I was fine. For some of us, those were skills we had to learn because we didn't get enough of that reflection when we needed it most. And this F's people up like you would not believe in fundamental ways that we learn how to compensate for all the time. But when we can recognize it as a lover wound, as a lover quadrant, then so let's ask now, what helps the lover? What helps specifically the lover get back into whack when it's a lover dilemma? That's what we want to talk about a little bit. Could be, yeah. So part of what happens, what helps, is a relationship. Gershon Kaufman calls it a relational bridge. I'm just going to call it our bridge. So what helps is making contact with someone who has enough juice to either validate or reflect back or attune or bless or meet you, so that at the very least you're not alone. And I think that most of us can tolerate really strong emotions if we don't have to do it alone, because you've got an emotion plus a state of aloneness and separation that exacerbates the wound or the incident. So yeah, relational bridge. What else do you think helps when your out of whackness is in the lover quadrant?
Space.
Tools of grieving.
Yeah, okay. So a little bit of knowledge. So when we're doing, so here's what I kind of want to point out, how these things can work together. So when we're talking about tools, or this is coming from the magician. So here's where we want input from other parts of ourselves. So this is what I was trying to kind of lead you to clunkily, is when we're in any one of these quadrants, and it helps a little bit to kind of go, oh, lover wound, oh, what does the lover need? Then we can borrow from the other parts if we need to. So for example, tools of grief, to understanding that there's a thing called grief, and that people have written about it and, practiced it all this time, is really helpful. Like, it's a thing. It kind of, oh, I'm grieving. Oh, I'm grieving. That comes straight from magician quadrant. Knowledge, understanding, that helps a lot. Does that make sense? Sometimes we would borrow from the warrior in terms of, let's say we're in the throes of codependency. So we're feeling desperate and scared and enmeshed with another person. And it's causing us all kinds of distress, and our distress is in the lover quadrant. One thing that might help is the whole idea coming from the warrior. How about you say no? How about you realize here's where you end and they begin? How about you remember it's not your deal, it's their deal. And it's very, very sad and really hard and scary that they are carrying themselves down this, this precipice. But you're not helping them if you go with them. So boundaries come from the warrior. Boundaries draw lines, and they advocate for yourself. So if you're in this kind of distress, you can activate your own advocate too. What do you need to do? So there's a particular thing that happens also sometimes in the lover quadrant in the throes of grief, separation, shame, loss. That you can find yourself flooding, like emotionally, like falling into a hole where you just can't stop crying. Like it just feels like you're bleeding out, like you're really deep in the throes of a lover crisis. And sometimes what you need is your warrior to just say, why don't you just go for it for the next hour? Why don't you just bawl your eyes out, and then let's go get something to eat? So that's how sometimes your warrior energy will come and say, you know what, I'm not sure this is helping you. You've been in this pit for a long, long time, so let's try to take some action. When if you're surrounding yourself with old pictures of your boyfriend, or all of the songs you used to sing together and all that, there's a time for that, and you need to get through that. But maybe we need to change your environment a little bit. Let's find you a new playlist. There's ways that the warrior can come in, and the magician warrior can come in and say, let's take care of you here in a very practical kind of way. Does that make any sense?
Which quadrant would it be, like for me, if I'm in this place, I cannot survive without my tribe. Like if I'm pulling people around me to go, I need accountability for my codependence, or I need someone to process with so I don't feel so crazy. I need someone to remind me what's true. Like, is that, would that be your warrior choosing to do that? Or
Choosing to do which? Reach
to
out?
your people, to get your
Yeah,
people back?
yeah, definitely. And I think you can get that, that from all these quadrants. But I think anytime you take action, it's enabling action is warrior energy. Anytime you come up with an idea for action, that's coming from magician. And you don't have to know all these things. Like say, I am having a lover crisis, so I think I need to call somebody now. Would that be, did that come from the magician, or is that really, you don't, but it sometimes helps to slow it down. But yeah, so anytime you're taking action, then on your own behalf, that's warrior. So the other thing, the biggest, the lover quadrant is really all about love too. I just want to highlight that. So love comes right from the heart, comes right from the lover quadrant. And if you find yourself in the throes of something, the easiest thing to remember is I need love. I need love. Love will fix it. Love will help me. Love will nourish me. Love will bring me back. Where can I get love? And then that usually sends you right back into your lover dilemma, which is nobody loves me, or I lose all the people that I love, or I've just been rejected. So we go round and round and round with that. But there's a way to be present with yourself in your lover quadrant. And here's where the sovereign comes in. So sovereign to the rescue. The sovereign energy, that ability that we have, is this wonderful phenomenon of being able to be present with a part of ourselves. So we have a part of ourselves that can be present with a part of ourselves. And in some way, it is not being alone, which is the weirdest thing. And it used to just drive me nuts. And I'll get this from a lot of people, like, be your own best friend, which sounds stupid all the time. It's really stupid all the time. But there is a way to be, this sense of withness with yourself is not going to solve the whole deal. Of course not. Yes, we need each other. Yes, we do. We can't survive without each other. However, internally, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, there is a way that you can call on the part of yourself that knows you're not alone, that knows you have value, that knows that you are lovable, that knows that you're a worthy human being. That's your sovereign. And to practice being with yourself in a loving and kind way is drawing on the knowledge of the energy of the sovereign and your soul to bring some self-love into the dilemma. And I wish that we could, part of the reason why I really want to get down and dirty in this is because we're used to concepts being the same as the thing. Does that make sense? So when I talk about love, I always feel this sense of inadequacy because we'll go to the concept of love. And so then when we say we have to practice self-love, then they're like, all right, self-love. What is self-love? All right, I need to fill up the bathtub and light a fucking candle. That's the concept of self-love. That's not actually the experience of self-love. So we have a lot of concepts that masquerade as the actual thing. Loving yourself is really hard, in a sense hard, partly because we have to think of the idea first. And so then we're trying to do it with magician energy, which is not what you need. Does that make sense? So it's masquerading for love itself because it was an idea we had. And this is what I stumble into every time I'm up here teaching, is because we are using magician all the time. And knowing a thing is not the same as the thing. And so my point about lovers, when you're in a lover crisis, you need juice. You need lover juice, basically. You need real emotion, you need comfort, you need soothing, you need connection, you need affirmation, you need validation. These are like the how many of that was? 7 food groups of the lover quadrant, you know, validation. I just, wow, that was good. I have to read back. You need, and this drives me crazy because counseling is lover magician, traditionally. So it's using magician to help lover all the time. And what makes me bang my head against the wall after 30 years of doing this is that understanding a thing is not the same as a thing. And people who come in, we feel so much better when we know the thing and it helps. It's just not the same as a real good meal. You know what I'm saying? So because we operate in magician so much and there's such a relief, understanding is a big relief, we don't notice that it wasn't the same as what your heart really needed because the magician feels relieved, you know, and we still abandon our little part. So when I'm stamping my foot and shaking my finger about self-compassion is the only thing that really heals you in these moments, that's what I'm saying, but I keep running into the frustration of self-compassion is a thing. It's a concept. And then I watch people roll their eyes and go, yeah, I know I should do that. Yeah, I know I should do that. Okay, and then they start to shrink back because I've said it 100 times and it's still in a concept form, and they didn't break the threshold of actually the phenomenon of being with yourself in an energetic way.
Can I
Yeah.
thought about that? I've just been having I have a hard time with feeling the grief because it's very scary and very overwhelming, and I feel like I'm drowning.
Yeah.
And so I have this whole thinking brain part that knows over time you don't actually die from crying too hard, you just get tired, you know. And so the thinking brain part, it knows I won't die, but I feel like I'm going to die or whatever. And anyways, recently I had kind of a breakthrough that I needed to write down, and I love that you said this morning about talking about yourself, because I go, oh my God, I think I look like I have lost my mind and fractured and have multiple personalities, because my entire journal thing yesterday was on we, and I kept talking to myself.
Referring to yourself as we? Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I said,
It sounds weird.
I promised you this, you know, and we did it, and we suffered this, and the this you, and the this you, and there was all of these different Kellys. I lost a baby Kelly, and you know, your parents were this Kelly. And I said, you know, we're okay. And I did this whole entire journal pep talk trying to go, yes, it's hard. You didn't die. We survived. And I thought, if somebody reads this, though, I do not maybe look so mentally healthy. Right?
How did you learn that, Kelly?
Did
you just do it intuitively?
Yes. I mean, just somehow, though, I love that you said that was what we're, because I'm so stuck in my thinking brain that this whole process was so weird, and it just flowed out. And I go, we're okay. We're good. We survived. You know, but it looked weird on paper.
Yes, it looks weird on paper. But this is the whole deal right here, just what you just said. And technically what you did was you drew on sovereign, your sovereign, to bless and validate and hold and connect the lover. That's what it looks like. And when you do that and you feel that happening, it is the same as attachment. It is the same. I really wish that we could watch this in real time, in real brain activity, when this is actually happening. You'll see it, finding the place where it's supposed to go. So, thank you.
It was cool.
Yeah, and to do it intuitively means that it works.
Thank you for telling me I'm not just a crazy person.
Yeah, this is the goal of it all, to be able to be in any one of these and to draw on intuitively these other things, because you know yourself so well. And particularly the sovereign, because the sovereign has all the goods. And so when you add sovereign to lover, then that's where healing happens. When you add sovereign to magician, that's where creativity happens. When you add sovereign to warrior, that's when you get shit done, you know. And so, because there's empowering and validation and nourishment and blessing, that the sovereign is the font of that. So when you can't get it now from, other places, you do have it within yourself, and that means you shouldn't need it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't need it, but it just means that when it's 3 a.m. and you feel like you're falling into a hole you'll never get out of, no, you have. Remember the sovereign. And that was this moment where, when I told you I got out of whack and I had this one idea, this word came in, remember the sovereign. And I just kind of went, oh. And instantaneously I was able to kind of step back and go, I'm out of whack in some really weird way, but that some part of me knows I'm okay. And that sense of okayness just came into me, and I got my whack back. And it was a very small, simple kind of example, but it illustrated for me how you kind of get this back. Okay, so I'm going to end right now. Thank you, or put a bookmark in it, because I have a feeling we'll be talking about this next time or more. And I have a date with Hannah, so I'm going to go see the opera. Yeah, and it starts like right now. So, so who's closing up?
Yeah.
I don't know.
can't. I have to.
I don't know. Can someone close up?
You can't. Are you sure? Okay, that'd be awesome. Because I have to go bring her some food.
Thanks. Sorry to just abruptly quit.
I went yesterday.
It's right there. There's the money bowl. It's an old.
I'm thinking Campbell.
Oh, is that Pete's play?
No.
Oh, he has a money fund. Okay, I'm taking the money and running. Hug today. You're awesome. Thanks for the great illustration. This is really.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too. Might have been your best one ever. Oh, really?
For real. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yes. Yeah. The dialogue, that Jungian dialogue. Bye, Cass. See you Monday. Yep.